I'm cooking two dishes, transferred from generation to generation. The first one is a curry, which is made from dried salted fish. And the second is a tomato chutney. There's a particular type of fish called ikan curau. So this is dried salted ikan curau. The English name of it is threadfin. The Tamil name is koduva. It's the best quality dried salted fish you can get. You can use a wok or you can use a saucepan or a pot. Frankly, my mother in the earlier days would use an earthenware pot. And there are some flavors you get out of cooking in a clay pot. If I may first start by putting the oil into the wok. Now this oil is the same oil that was earlier used to lightly fry the dried fish. The oil has the flavor of the dried salted fish. They would use the Indian gingerly oil, which is made from sesame seed. While the oil is being heated up, what I can explain next is we would put the condiments. And not many people know the importance of tempering. Basically, it means that you have to fry the condiments and the other ingredients in oil. And the logic is when you do that, the condiments have cells that have aromatic oils in it. And the spices are the same. So it releases this and gives a flavor. The first condiment, this is cumin. This is mustard. This is fenugreek. Okay. The urid dal is one of the 4 condiments that you use immediately when the oil is hot. It is broken and skinless. And that's what I'm going to now slowly add one by one. This is the start of the tempering process. It sort of has a popping sound you get, when you sort of more or less ready. I remember it vividly the way my grandmother would make it on a clay pot, You can buy it in Serangoon Road actually. Maybe I should go and get one of these things and be more perfect in my cooking. You can smell the curry leaf. We are nearby. Now this is the garlic. There's sort of 5 garlic pieces cut into half. And now you add the 2 large sliced onions. The usual Bombay onions, I think they're called. Get it all into small little strips. And then you can put the 3 green chilies, which are split into like 2 pieces.
What do you remember about your grandma?
Oh, my grandmother was a formidable cook. She had this uncanny ability to taste a dish and tell you the ingredients of the dish just by tasting it. Her husband was a merchant. He was the only Hindu educated merchant in Arab Street. Because of the location, Arab Street, and all the friends they had were like North Indian Muslims, South Indian Muslims, and Arab people, and Singapore has Arab community from Hyderabad. She learned a lot of these very interesting dishes, which were of the Muslims, of the Northern Indians. She really was very good in diffusion. My other grandmother, my father's mother, was a bit more traditional Indian, but still, she was born in Penang, so she would know how to cook Malay food, etc. But I must tell you, my mother was like my grandmother, but 5 times better. She could cook Chinese, Indian, Western, Malay, peranakan, nasi lemak, mee siam, laksa, anything, kueh pai tee, popiah, and it would be better than any of the hawker stalls. And we were really spoiled. That's why we're all overweight. You see, all my brothers and I were really constantly having to, cope with all the good food my mother used to give us. There are 4 boys in my family, right? No girls. And you'll be surprised, all of us can cook. Also because when we all went overseas to study, my mother gave us recipes to try out when we went overseas. But unfortunately, my mother's recipes were very, very elaborate. There's no way we could spend hours cooking. My mother was very perfect. She was a perfectionist. I put some chili powder, and the chili powder, about 2 tablespoons of it. So now, put a little bit of water. And now I'm ready to put the vegetables. This is white radish, either one big one or 2 small ones, cut into slices. And then that's brinjal, again sliced up into pieces. I'm adding now the fish, and I put some water just now. So this is the salt fish. The salt fish has got to be prepared a little bit. What we normally do, we cut it into square pieces, 1 inch square, let's say, and then we put it in water, let it soak for a while, let's say 30 minutes, with a bit of lemon. And what that does is to take away some of the excess saltiness. Before you fry it, you must make sure all the water is taken out. So you would dab it with a kitchen towel, completely dry it over a fire with a thong, and then you would fry it in the oil. Don't compromise on the quality of the ikan kerao. It makes a big, big difference.
Would your grandmother have used this?
Yeah, you would have used the best quality ikan kerao without a doubt. Without a doubt. This ingredient it's called field beans, all right? And these field beans, you buy it, and then you would soak it, and you would I've already cooked it, It's quite interesting because you normally don't use this for other curries. You don't even use it for fish curry, but you use it for this dried fish curry. And especially the traditional way, the way my mother would make it, or my grandmother would make it, is to always have this. Now this is tamarind. Be careful about how much you put. You would take a ball of tamarind, and you would soak that ball of tamarind in water, and of course you remove all the seeds. In this case, I'm doing a tomato chutney. This tomato chutney goes very well, again, with white rice. It goes well with thosais, with appams. I'm using a saucepan in this particular instance. This is quite a quick dish to prepare. It's not extremely elaborate. And so I'm going to put the oil. This oil is the oil that was used for frying of the fish. And so the oil has the flavor of the dried ikan kerao. The oil, of course, needs to be pretty hot before you put in the spices. I'm going to put in 3 of these condiments. This is cumin, and this is mustard, and this is the urad dal, which is broken without the skin. More or less ready, it's popping, and you could put the curry leaves. Again, these are just raw curry leaves. The condiments, usually about 1 teaspoon each will be fine. So there you are. Then you would put the garlic. Again, you would get sort of 4 garlics. And this is all part of this so-called tempering process. You put the onions, sort of saute it until it's sort of light brown, reasonably cooked, not overcooked. But Indian food, there are 2 versions. There's always a wet version, which is a curry, but there's also a dry version. The Tamil word for dry version is paratal. That means it doesn't have much curry, but it's got like a rendang texture to it. And I like that because I like the flavor of that paste. Then there is another version which is extra dry. What goes really well in that extra dry version is lamb or mutton. And you would do that with curry leaves, you would do that with a bit of cashew nuts and dried red chili. You have the sort of rendang type where you have a sort of pasty accompaniment, not a curry. But we don't call it rendang, we call it paratal. And then you can do a chicken, you can do a mutton. Of course, some people may do a pork paratal too, or a beef paratal. People who are Christians, for example, they don't have any dietary restriction. I'm going to add the spices. This is the turmeric powder, 1 teaspoon. This next one is chili. Now these tomatoes have been cut into pieces. So this is the important ingredient in this dish because this is a tomato chutney. So on certain days, which are like the death anniversary of our deceased ancestors, usually parents, those days my mother would make a fantastic vegetarian meal. When I mean a vegetarian meal, it's a traditional style, and she would have it on a banana leaf. So we'll have those days, a lot of banana leaves all over the place. In my house, we had banana plants. And that was really a treat. Now I'm going to put the ikan kerao. But this time, the ikan kerao, after you soak it in water, with a bit of lemon, and then after you fry it, and you remove the skin, you pound it. You pound it, and you pull it. I'm going to pour this now. This is more or less the last item. And then later on, salt if necessary. Like the curry powder, my grandmother time, we would have a granite pedestal. On that pedestal, there would be like a rolling stick. It's not a stick, but made of granite, a roller. All the ingredients, right, that constitute like a fish curry powder or a mutton curry powder, which I said cumin, coriander, cloves, all that would be ground manually into a paste. Every home must have these two things. It must have a pedestal of granite and a roller made of granite. It is like a sacred thing. You have to bring it with you when you go to another home. You have to bring a bowl of salt water and you have to bring that. It's a very, very interesting tradition. I'm tasting it. Nice. This is finished more or less. You just have to get it cooked a bit.
How do you know when it's done?
When the tomato is, for example, like now, sort of really soft, but not completely liquidated. This goes very well with thosai. When my mother got married, she was doing it that way. My grandmother would do it that way. Then later on, she found it too much of a hassle. Then what she would do, for example, chili powder, she would buy red chili, the dried one, and then she would buy the cumin powder, the cumin seeds, the coriander seeds, and she would bring it to the mill, they grind it. So she would sort of be a bit more efficient. But even she, sometimes when she wants to make a sambar, for making sambar you need to have small onions, shallots, and garlic and stuff like that. She would like to use the roller to get the taste out. I think this is more or less finished. You just have to let it simmer and cook a bit. And this doesn't take long to cook, so it's finished so fast.
Thanks, Brian, for cooking for us. The food looks amazing. So can I serve everyone?
Thank you so much, Jason. It's a pleasure.
You were telling us earlier that your great-grandfather arrived on Merchant Street, or was it Arab Street?
If you look at my family, there are two sides. My grandfather on my mother's side was the only person who was born in India, but came at the age of 5. He went to his ACS and things like that, and then decided to become a businessman and set up a shop in Arab Street. On my father's side, we are 6th generation, so we have no connection to India whatsoever. Historically recorded that he came in 1836.
You were mentioning earlier about the kind of fusion foods that your mom...
Oh, my mom was a
tried
great
or
experimenter.
made. Yes.
Indians don't eat soy sauce. My mother would take a lamb or mutton, and then she would put soy sauce, and she would put peas. And it would be, Italian, sort of different, not typical Indian lamb dish. It'd be more a fusion of Chinese and Indian. She normally won't put any spice, she'll put pepper. She just put pepper, green peas, of course, onions and the rest of it, but ketchup.
I mean, paratha, so wheat-based is also North Indian, not so much a South Indian.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting that even on this table, there's this fusion of rice and wheat.
Yeah.
So Brian, actually you have your own version of the thosai.
It's true. Jason, you tried it before. You said, when we have thosai, we make it from lentils and pulses, and you can eat it and not feel guilty. And I love thosai, so I only have that kind of thosai at home. And it's actually very tasty.
Shall we try a bit?
Yes. And then the chutney that goes with it, right?
Yes.
So how has each daughter-in-law been adapted or changed the way that food is cooked in the house, and what tradition have they brought in?
And you want to ask me the question or Chitra the question?
Either one.
Well, basically, I think when I came into the family, I wasn't a very great cook. My mother-in-law was an excellent teacher. She will demonstrate, and I think all the daughter-in-laws have had the opportunity to actually learn from her. For me, I felt that her cooking was very practical. It was easy to follow, so I didn't really bring in any of my own family traditions as such.
So what would have been a tradition from your side, for instance?
We wouldn't have used sauces in actually marinating the meat, but she would do that. But my mother-in-law is also very particular, like, onions. All the onions will actually be cleaned with a wet cloth. There's no washing of onions as such because the flavors get, and she would use lemongrass, which is something that I don't use. But you know, it turned out to be really nice, and it's not only fusion with a bit of Malay, but I think there's a bit of North. Like for instance, in my family, we wouldn't use nuts in our curries. She would. We won't use things like onion leaves and coriander, but she will actually put it into her masala.
And do your children carry on this tradition?
Very much. My daughter, has my mother-in-law's recipes which she tries out. And I think equally my son to some extent.
She's very good at experimentation.
Yeah, I think I picked that up from my mother-in-law. I think it's just this subconscious way of not wanting to compete with my mother-in-law. I stick to her recipes, but I do a lot of non-Indian cooking. So there is no room for comparison.
Food and eating and having people around, you said your home was always like this. So it must bring back memories and this notion of sharing your heritage.
True, and we do that as a norm in our family now. As a tradition that we continue. For example, tonight we have a dinner. Our neighbors are coming over, Chinese neighbors are coming over, and Chitra's making biryani. Totally different from what you have now. We will cook everything at home, with the exception of lamb. We tend to buy lamb. Chitra can make very good Spanish food and Italian food, and also things like mee siam. We often have mee siam, laksa, so we have different types of menus for different occasions.
What a lovely way of integrating into the land that you live in, right? Through all the food that's available.
Yeah.
My mother would make chicken rice, satay. Her lunch lemak, fantastic.
Did she make her own belacan?
Yes, actually, yeah.
Special.
Only with caramelized small onions, that's it. She'll never use a big onion.
So
She's very particular about different flavors.
Yeah, also I was looking up threadfin, and it's really almost as old as your family.
Yeah.
Like the early mercantile records of salted fish arriving in Singapore is in the 1830s,
Yeah.
the early 1830s.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, and it's also very tied to the monsoon season.
Yeah.
That's right.
Dried fish is eaten typically during the monsoons when there are no trawlers going out to fish.
Where do you usually shop for your ingredients?
One of the best pieces of dried fish that I found is actually in the wet market in Tekka Market. The old lady who's at the corner.
I know her.
Yeah, so she's probably the best. The wet salted fish and the dry salted fish. I think the wet ones which are more moist, taste a lot better than the dried ones.
Well, thank you again, Brian, for having us for dinner. It's been a wonderful experience.
It's a pleasure.
Amazing food journey. Thank you so much.
You're so kind and very effusive in your praises, which I don't deserve.